So I would now like to introduce Vani Moodley. She is the Chief Executive at Vani Moodley Associates, a global entrepreneurship, management, and leadership and employee wellness training, consulting, coaching, and development company. She has 30 years of experience in the respective sectors and has held national leadership positions in various institutions, Independent Business Enrichment Center, founded and directed Vuki Uzathi and Institute for Gender and Economic Development, and served on various boards, including past chairman and founder member of Women Building Our Africa Financial Services Primary Cooperative, licensed by the Reserve Bank of South Africa, past vice president of the Durban Center of Commerce and Industry, and past chairman, Durban, and member of the National Board of Business Women's Association South Africa. She has traveled, networked, and presented conference papers and trained in 28 countries and 4 islands in the world, and has provided services to clients such as SEDA, the DT, and the GTZ, now GIZ, Oxfam America, the International Labor Organization, the World Islamic Economic Forum, the Government of Nigeria, and the World Bank International Finance Corporation, Global Training and Development Specialist and Consultant for Workplace Options, a global employee assistance provider, training senior leaders, managers, and executives for multinational companies online and face-to-face. She actively fosters international trade links between South African and global businesses. Vani Moodley is speaking on illuminating the truths to turn the tide.
I must say, after listening to the youth, I'm feeling slightly intimidated. I don't think I'm going to have that level of energy and enthusiasm, so please bear with me, and well done, Nirbanu. That was amazing.
Amazing.
Great. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm going to be as precise as I possibly can. And the information I'm about to share with you is basically based on my 30 years of experience of working with men and women, in particular women leaders, women entrepreneurs, and some of it extends globally. And I thought it would be a wonderful opportunity to get submissions from women all over the world to basically contribute to the book that we will be launching later on. So I'll tell you more about the book later, but I'm going to just announce some of the findings as we progress. So the first statement I'd like to make is that women leaders and entrepreneurs have made incredible strides in the business and corporate world. And as a result, women have had a myriad of experiences in their growth process. And I think if we went through a little focus group session here, a lot of what I'm about to share will emerge as well. So the World Economic Forum in 2021 estimated that the world will take approximately 130 years to achieve gender parity. 38 years. And that was also exacerbated by gender-based violence, patriarchy, and the COVID pandemic. When I looked at these stats about 5 years ago, it was sitting at 85%. So it's not improving, it's actually retrogressing. Okay? And other studies taken by organizations like the Business Women's Association in collaboration with US organizations came up with similar kinds of results. So it can be validated. So in addition to experience in training, mentoring, coaching, and serving on various boards, the research has been conducted with women leaders and entrepreneurs over the 30 years. And to extend the findings, a call for submissions was circulated to business institutions and women's organizations in different parts of the world. So we received 20 submissions from women in 6 different countries in the world. And some of them, of course, also emanated from the conference in Rome. And I have quite a significant number of women in Egypt who contributed as well. And it's amazing the kind of work that they do there is in terms of women empowerment. So some of the countries, the 6 countries are South Africa, Egypt, India, the United Kingdom, USA, and Argentina. And the similarities in the stories are quite uncanny. So this study drew comparisons and extracted common themes, explored and interrogated solutions to turn the tide for future women leaders and entrepreneurs, and will basically explore the scope for future research. just to give you a heads up, and I'm coming to that in a bit, 22 themes were derived out of the 20 submissions. And the occurrence of the themes and the frequency of the occurrence was quite astounding. So for true gender parity to be achieved, women leadership must be authentic with unbiased reflection and introspection at multiple levels. And this can be achieved in addition to addressing issues like gender-based violence. And of course, patriarchy, which are key debilitating factors. So the call for submissions focused on the following factors. We wanted people to contribute their real experiences, not things that they've heard of from other people. We wanted them to basically share with us how they've confronted their fears with courage. And whilst you had some issues coming up in terms of the negative impact of specific types of leadership styles, you had a lot of positive feedback on how women leaders have influenced other women to basically grow and aspire to what they wanted to achieve. And of course, we need to look at admirable leadership styles, ethical and inclusive leadership, and the duty of care that we all have as leaders. It's got nothing to do with women only. Men in leadership also have a duty of care to the people that they lead. So I also highlighted the concept of bullying by women against other women, more because I had some personal experiences. As soon as 2 years ago, as recently as 2 years ago, which I consider myself to be an empowered woman, quite experienced, able to manage personalities, and there it was, boom in my face. And of course, all that it does to you in terms of making you doubt yourself and your own ability to lead. And of course, authentic leadership is always about being real and true to the situation. It doesn't matter if there's friendships. We all create friendships. But when we're sitting on a professional platform, it is my duty as the chairman of the organization to ensure that ethical governance takes place. And if that upsets you, unfortunately, you have to deal with it. So, and I thought, why aren't women talking about this? We have been so caught up with talking about the patriarchal society and fighting for gender parity in the world that we are too afraid to talk about the real issues we're experiencing as women leaders by and from other women leaders, because we're too afraid of widening this gender gap, this gender parity. But what does this mean for the future generation of women leaders going forward? What is the precedence that we're allowing to pass us by without saying anything? You know, for years on end, my mentors, who am I very close to, and both of them are men, would always say to me, women can't work together, you know? And I used to challenge it. I used to challenge it quite significantly until I had the experience that I did, Dana. And and I actually had to bring on board 2 men to basically calm the situation down on a board. And it worked.
Testosterone versus estrogen.
So I needed to temper the estrogen with testosterone.
Absolutely. It's the only thing that
In
works.
order to cut through the bullshit, as one may say. So pardon my language.
That's exactly right.
So these are some of the realities that we have to acknowledge. Yeah? Why aren't we being real about it? It does need it sometimes. Yeah? So, of course, mental wellness and optimal performance levels. What happens to your mental wellness when you've been bullied? I mean, I couldn't focus on my work, and this was a voluntary position. I couldn't, I was calling the head of risk, and I was saying to him, this is my thoughts. What do you think? I was calling my mentors and saying, where have I faltered here? So they make you doubt yourself when all you're doing is following proper governance and ethical procedures. So the 22 themes that have emerged, and they can be collapsed into each other, there are lots of common threads. And what I say is that mental wellness happens to be a common thread that runs through everything, ultimately. So power, an enabler and disruptor, and that came out quite prominently in most of the submissions. Corruption, a view on ethics and governance. Of course, mental wellness is a cross-cutting theme. The leadership styles of women with an emphasis on authoritarian and narcissistic leadership styles. The importance of mentorship and coaching. Create an enabling environment for women to grow. Become fearless women leaders of substance and integrity. Make a difference to your community. Operate at your optimal potential and facilitate the same in your team. And identify the leaders and nurture them without prejudice. Recognize and reward star performers in your team. Create awareness of your services. Rape, a weapon of war. One of the contributors was involved in the Tamil Elam movement, and she's of British origin, married to a Sinhalese, and basically visited Sri Lanka and looked at how women came together to support the victims of rape as a weapon of war, how they set up orphanages to basically take care of the children of soldiers who had fallen. So these are some of the amazing things that women are doing all over the world. Traditional gender stereotypes still powerful in male-dominated sectors. And high rate of resignations from women leaders. And that's an interesting one because, about 5 years ago, I found an article in the newspaper that basically spoke to the concept of women in high-ranking senior executive positions are starting to resign from their positions, especially those who were mothers. And it's just that because of the demanding job, they're realizing how they're missing out on the growth process of their children. And that's upsetting them greatly. So they may be stay-at-home dads, but they're really missing out. And of course, the stress and the strain and managing multiple roles, etc. Peer learning, raising women's awareness of empowerment, the need for economic independence, the need for community mobilization to recognize women's empowerment, and of course, a strong message from everybody: women, live your dream now. Don't wait. And men and women lead and experience leadership differently. The impact of social perspectives and socialization on women's leadership styles, and of course, skills development for thriving leaders and women entrepreneurs must be prioritized. Just a very important point when mentorship came up. The one thing that featured very prominently was that mentors are happy to mentor the younger women coming into a corporate or a government institution. And they feel comfortable because they're not a threat to them. But with the much older women, they kind of try to avoid that mentorship and coaching or don't do it as they should. Very interesting because they're more of a threat to them. And interestingly, I think all of the people who have submitted are over the age of 40. I did invite youth, but nobody wanted to kind of put their head on the block and share their experiences. I had 2 anonymous contributors because these were quite hectic situations, and one is still in the employ of the organization, where she was bullied by her immediate manager. So, and now, of course, the manager was changed. But it was in a social worker's environment where there should be a sensitivity to bullying and these kinds of leadership-related issues. And she didn't realize that she was being bullied until one of her colleagues said to her, "But how does she talk to you like that? Does she do that all the time? Why is she bullying you?" And, she was just withdrawing and kind of felt that she eventually lost her voice because no matter what she said, it was going to be the absolute wrong thing that she would say. So she just withdrew into herself, and she was going through this almost mental withdrawal from her job, from her family and everything. And then when somebody just said that to her, it kind of dawned on her, wow, why didn't I realize this? I'm a social worker, for heaven's sake. So irrespective of the profession, when it happens to you, you don't realize it's happening until you're quite down the line in that experience. So the book that we're about to launch this afternoon has just focused on 3 themes because, as you can see, 22 themes is quite a handful to go through, and it's quite packed in terms of the meaning behind each of those themes and the issues behind each of those themes. So the book basically focused on power and enabler and disruptor, corruption, a view on ethics and governance, and the leadership styles of women, authoritarian and narcissistic leadership styles. And of course, mental wellness was identified as a cross-cutting theme. So I'm going to talk to about two of them because I know I have limited time. Mental wellness. So according to Beth McGrathy, in her industry research entitled Defining Mental Wellness versus Mental Health in 2021, she said mental wellness is an internal resource that helps us think, feel, connect, and function. It is an active process that helps us to build resilience, to grow and flourish. And I basically reflected on Corey Key's Mental Health Continuum from 2002, where we speak to the X and Y axes on the optimal well-being on the vertical axis, with on the top at minimal well-being at the bottom. And on the right of the horizontal axis, you would have maximum mental illness and minimum mental illness. So if you're experiencing optimal well-being and minimum mental illness, you can flourish without mental illness. If you're experiencing minimum mental illness and minimum well-being, you can languish without mental illness. And this is almost, you have phrases like quiet quitting and so on. You would have people in that particular space where they feel they've spoken and nothing's happened, so they just kind of quit quietly and just get on with what they're supposed to do, producing the bare minimum without operating at their optimal potential. And one can describe that as someone who's languishing, right? Minimal well-being and maximum mental health illness. The person can languish with mental illness, and that is when there's no self-care, perhaps no diagnosis, no medication, and any other form of support somebody in that space would have. Maximum mental illness and optimal well-being, the person can flourish despite mental illness with the right kind of care. And this is a surprising factor to most people, even HR heads at multinationals. They love this continuum. They just think that it is the strongest and the most powerful message we could send out as to how, when one takes care of themselves, physically, emotionally, psychologically, and medically, you can actually flourish with mental illness. So what? Given the context of mental wellness and mental illness, the critical question arises: are women leaders of the current era aware of mental health?
Great question.
The importance of it, techniques and strategies to maintain wellness, mental wellness. At what point does the accumulation of ongoing stress, balancing these multiple roles and self-care become a priority in our lives? We're too busy being busy to worry about ourselves, and that's the reality. Is there sufficient introspection on how one's mental wellness can impact teams, colleagues, family? As soon as those words leave our mouths, there may be regret, but the impact has already happened. Yeah. So these are some of the things that we need to become more aware of and be more in tune with. So Workplace Options, the company that I work with, together with a few of us, have come up with the stress and anxiety scale. It's the 7-point scale, which represents how the team member is managing the anxiety they're experiencing. So we train executives, leaders, managers, and we basically also kind of get them to empower them or provide them with skills to identify what's going on for people on their team and be able to provide the necessary support through relevant interventions as they see fit. So we have classified the reaction from 1 to 7. So the reactions to the VUCA world, VUCA stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous, and that was a term coined during the USSR, one of the wars, and of course talking about the complex environment and nature of the environment in which, or the economy, the environment, the political arena in which they were operating at that particular time. And during COVID, this term came to the fore in terms of the complexity and the multiplicity of issues that were compounded at that particular point in time, which exacerbated what was going on in the environment in which we were operating. So their reaction is mild to moderate, coping strategies coping strategies are to manage the feelings. 2, they're managing anxiety most of the time. They very quickly regroup without visible indicators should there be stress or trauma or any occurrences that occur in their lives, whether it be personal or professional. So in that particular instance, we advise the leaders to sense and shield and be able to support people by just asking the questions, are you okay? How are you doing? And also encouraging them to sometimes go for counseling or debriefing sessions just to come to terms with what's going on around them. And of course, as we know, in some cultures it's taboo. You're considered to be cuckoo and crazy if you're seeing a counselor or a psychiatrist. In other cultures, if you don't have one, there's something wrong with you. So we deal with a varied range of people. And of course, we have to accommodate all of that. So 3, 4, and 5, we're basically moving into the yellow-amber zone, where feelings of anxiety increase periodically. They feel restless, overwhelmed, attempts to manage their daily work is limited. Sorry, this seems to have slipped a bit. Then 4, feelings of anxiety continue to increase, and signs of anxiety on most days and physical symptoms appear. Occasional physical symptoms along with emotional symptoms appear in 5. And of course, there's occasional difficulty in performing work. And once they move into the orange zone, you would see that both emotional and physical symptoms are showing up. They're no longer effectively managing anxiety. They're showing signs of fatigue and diminished performance at the workplace. And of course, the last is employees showing signs of exhaustion, apathy, and disengagement. And you would find that at that particular point, so if you looking at Sense and Shield for 1 and 2, you're looking at supporting and signposting. Most of the companies have employee assistance programs, so they're able to refer people to that. But those who don't, and it's also for the leaders themselves to be aware of what's going on for them, right? And reaching out and getting some kind of support to signpost them to the resources that are available in and around or within the company or outside of the company. And of course, once they move into zone 6 and 7, they need more support and they need assistance to strategize, to draw up an action plan. And there needs to be closer monitoring, even if it means that the leader has to take the initiative to make the contact with the EAP program in order to effectively support them. So, Petrina Coventry indicates that abusive people gain and maintain power over their victims with controlling or coercive behaviors, subjecting that person to psychological, physical, sexual, or financial abuse. I think it's a well-known fact also that young women are under pressure to perform sexual favors, and that goes unspoken of, okay? And that's another stressor and issue of anxiety. In terms of leadership styles, whilst many women leaders in their submissions confirmed that they generally admired women's leadership styles, many also indicated that they had some challenging encounters that negatively impacted their mental wellness and performance. So the authoritarian and narcissistic leadership styles were identified as challenging leadership styles to deal with. And when we spoke about authoritarian, it's also known as autocratic. Leadership is a management style in which individuals have total decision-making power and absolute control over their subordinates or their employees. And the purpose of the autocratic leadership style is to establish centralized control and use that to achieve desired results. And narcissism, which is really gone unnoticed for many, many years and starting to emerge as quite an issue of concern right now, was first Robert Wilder was first to conceptualize this in 1925 as a personality trait, and his definition described individuals who are condescending. They feel superior to others, are preoccupied with admiration, and exhibit a lack of empathy. And Sigmund Freud in 1914 published his theory of narcissism, where he postulated that all humans have a level of narcissism. This is very interesting from birth. But the human mind is designed to basically evolve from that. And the narcissistic behavior pattern perpetuates when that evolution doesn't take place, from being self-absorbed to being more family-oriented. And that's where it should stay. But then they slip back into becoming self-absorbed. So that's a very interesting concept. So some recommendations to current and future leaders. Some of this has come from the ladies, the submitters, and there was some interesting, information that basically came through as lessons, real lessons, not from textbooks, real lessons that they've learned. Have clearly defined rules and processes. Under an autocratic leader, no team member has the final say, whether on a critical business decision or how the company is run. So when roles, rules, and processes are clearly defined in the leadership arena, things tend to run smoothly and efficiently since one person is making all those decisions, but there's no buy-in from the team. So there's a recommendation that there's a suggestions box, but if that is not looked at, it becomes a futile experience. Some recommendations to deal with a narcissistic boss, and I've listed a 10 there. Remind yourself of your value, compliment them frequently, keep a paper trail, network for yourself, get outside support, take time for reflection. Remember who you're dealing with, diversify your work experience or role, develop a strategy, and consult a labor law expert. So people may have narcissistic behavior patterns, and that translates into narcissistic leadership styles. So it's interesting that narcissism is actually also classified as a leadership style. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much, and happy to talk about it.
And next, I would like to call up to recognize the lovely Vani Moodley, eminent speaker.
Hey.
Today we're here at the Global Research Conference 2023 at Cambridge University, and we have Vani Moodley with us. Vani, what was your main message you gave us today?
Great. Well, so the key points I delivered to the audience today was basically to facilitate the process of women introspecting on their own leadership styles and starting to embrace other women as equals and facilitating the process of empowering women as equals through mentorship and coaching. You know, what we find is that predominantly mentors are very happy, female mentors are very happy to mentor younger women who are entering into the work environment, but feel a little bit threatened when they have to mentor women of about their age. And it's also all about respect and acknowledgement. It's about transforming the women leadership arena so that we don't emulate men in the way in which we lead, but we basically map the path going forward. And to that effect, I have submissions from 20 women from 6 countries in the world, and I had the wonderful opportunity of launching my book called The Triumphs and Kafkaesque of Women Leaders, which basically captures the essence of the experiences of 20 women from 6 different parts of the world, and the commonalities are quite uncanny. So we've unpacked the themes and addressed 3 of the 22 themes that have emerged, and sequels will basically capture the remaining themes. So I'm very excited to be here. It was an awesome opportunity to engage with such dynamic and inspiring women. I take away many, many lessons from them, lots of learnings, and of course look forward to future events hosted. For me, one of the cherry on the top was launching the book at King's College at Cambridge University, and it was my absolute privilege, and I thank Professor Dr. Somani for her input in editing the book pro bono, and also for facilitating this conference and inviting us through to come together. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Congratulations again.
Thank you.